Hello there. I assume that you can watch me right now because, as I mentioned before, it's YouTube. So in YouTube, you never know what's going to happen. Takes a while for you to actually go live. That being said, we are today watching a match from Stage 342 against Stage 338. We are a little bit late due to some technical issues on the game side, and it seems like we are in the 10-minute mark. Right now, it seems like State 342 is a little bit behind. State 338 has a power advantage in this case, but State 342 has a similar gameplay in terms of how strategic and good in execution they are as State 333. So, although there is a huge difference right now comparing to the time of 40,000 points in the beginning of this match, we can expect to see a lot of back and forth coming in buildings and everything else happening right now during the match, especially when the 45-minute mark starts. All right. So considering that, to keep that in mind, let's watch and see how the match is going. I apologize for some of the issues that of visual issues you're gonna see because I had to re-download everything. that being said, that being said, we are going to be able to watch the match as it is occurring right now. Currently, it seems like Stage 338 is dominating most of the buildings, but every dynamic changes every few minutes as a new stage actually comes through. This next stage is going to be at the 45-minute mark when the center opens, and there are going to be more buildings to be fought for. And when that does happen, indeed, we are gonna see the things being spread a little bit more thin. This in this match, it seems like state three four two is and 338 are not necessarily using the meta that a lot of the alliances have been using of not fighting for the external buildings. Seems like that they are doing that specifically because they believe that they have a bigger power to be trying to fight for it. But we'll see if that's gonna pay out, especially due to the fact that it seems like 342 with Salamander here is holding Solar Power Station. Salamander is one of the strongest players, and they also are able to hold Treatment Center too. We are gonna see in 2 minutes Center being held, and so we are gonna be able to check how that is going to affect things. All right. So it seems like 342 also is starting to take some other buildings back. The timing for them taking these buildings is actually super good. Um, the reason that the timing for this is super good is that even though that they don't have solar and it will take roughly 3 minutes to take solar, this pressures the enemy team to not be able to contest those buildings if they do not allow them to fight for the center. So they either have to choose between contesting those buildings or contesting center. And as you can see, the timing between these and center is slightly lower. So they will have to be able to divide their efforts to try to take control of center to fight for center. So this is actually a very good move from 342 to put pressure in some of the important buildings, the big buildings in here plus solar, which will give them a strategic advantage in fighting for the other buildings and resetting things. So I do think that this was a very strong move from the part of 342. We're gonna see how it's gonna affect the match in more 50 seconds. Seems like Chuck just flipped again solar power station. It still means that the Chuck is going to be stuck here during the match that when the center is going to go through, and Chuck is one of their strongest players as well. So we are going to have to check what they're going to do. As far as I know, in terms of how things are, it seems like this is going to be an interesting match to check, especially during the middle part of the match. Because although the blue team has 0 points right now, they have two of the buildings that give most points. And as soon as they are able to take full control, if they are able to take full control, they are going to be able not only to get a good chunk of points, but they are also going to be able to pressure them in the center. Seems like 338 is not exactly letting them get a full control building points, but this means that they committed a lot, and they're gonna have some struggles to also keep all those buildings plus the center. Hello, Sadila, and hello, Sasha. How are you two doing? All right. Here is the thing. Free 8 tends to be a little bit aggressive. They have three big players, mainly Sus, Cardin, and Chuck, and those three players tend to burn a lot of people. I do think that whenever they are fighting for some of the other places, they are gonna be not only trying to fight for the buildings, but try to get try to get some of the players that are outside of the buildings that they are fighting for to get them off the buildings by burning them. One of the most common strategic things that you can do as a rally lead in an event like this is to time your marches and to time your rallies into players that are joiners that are around the buildings that you want to take over. So if they stay in the building, they have to take a hit, a lot of things being burned. And if they do not take that hit, they have to actually be able to not be able to fight in the building, and this leaves the building more vulnerable and things like that. What's the difference between Reservoir and Doomsday? Well, mechanically, as in how you fight the fights themselves, there are no difference between Reservoir and Doomsday. Doomsday is a competitive version of Reservoir where you actually have a tournament with a system of upper bracket and lower bracket, and the more you keep winning, the more you go up, and eventually you get to the bracket that you are in and able to fight for the finals. This is the lower bracket, which is why we're doing it in a Thursday. And the champions of the lower bracket will have another chance of fighting in the upper bracket again in the finals against the enemy team that's going to be probably winning the upper bracket. If I had to make a guess, that's going to be VVV, and we are going to see which matches are going to which people are going to fight for VVV in this. So right now, Mr. Blood is putting a lot of pressure with Sus here trying to fight back. Sus is one of their strongest players, as I mentioned before. We'll see if Sus try to burn some of their players. It seems like right now, 338 is putting a lot of pressure in 342, but 342 have seen them burn a lot of 338 players, and that may put a lot of pressure in the end of the match unless they pull the move of removing the players out to reset them with some of the smaller players that may be the reservists. But I don't think that we might be seeing that. But as you can see right now, it seems like Joe and Salomon are just burning Kitty here at the moment as an example. And I've seen a bunch of these players being burned, even though Chuck here is one of the top players trying to be around them. It seems like SJL just got full control of both Dev Compound and munitions, which is gonna escalate a little bit more in terms of their power, especially munitions here, due to the fact they already have higher stats. I am doing great, Tarzan. Uh, what do you mean, Pepe? Sadly, I don't understand Italian, and right now it's a little bit too hectic for me to look at the translator. All right, another thing that it's going to be interesting to check in this match, regardless, is how things are going to perform in the next 5 minutes. Because as I mentioned before, in the 36-minute mark, we do have the water tanks, and the water tanks automatically gives points for everyone else. So this means that it's actually going to be able to it's going to be able to shift the balance a little bit. Although the amount of points is 74,000, it's around 70,000 in difference. Another thing that you have to keep in mind is that a lot of that score comes from buildings from outside, and those buildings can have that score moved around with things that are happening. So, assuming that you take these outside buildings, you have roughly 20,000 points. That means 40,000 points that could be flipped. So, in this case, that would take 20,000 points from SJL and give, assuming that they would gather everything, 20,000 points for 338. And this means that the actual advantage, real advantage at the moment, it's closer to around a 40,000 point gap than a 70,000 power gap, as this score may reflect right now. That score is, of course, a score that is from SJL, but one of strategy that a lot of alliances do is to focus on the points that can't be taken from them, and then use those points later on to be able to actually fight back in the end of the match. And I do think that due to them being behind in score, they are going to be using that strategy right now, fighting against SJL. I may be wrong about this because I have not interviewed them before, but as I mentioned, 342 tends to be very strategic in how they play and adapt very quickly. So I do think they're going to put pressure to reduce the amount of points that they have to try to turn this over later on. Hi Lele, how are you doing? Prometheus is, however, going to get a first full control here, probably for 342, although there is a rally coming from Hazi and one coming for Cardini. Cardin, sorry. Cardin is one of their top players. And looks like Prometeo got a full control. And as they got a full control, they got a chunk of score here. Even though that it did bounce, it's not only about bouncing. Every time that you get full control, you get a bunch of points. Which is why sometimes it's not worth fighting as much for the external buildings that a lot of players have found right now. Seems like there's a lot of rallies starting against Sus right now. I assume it's against center. It's probably because Sus is going to have full control in the center and make the advantage be a little bit bigger again. As we are going to see, Sus is going to get full control here, and the points are going to blow up a little bit of chunk in here. And it seems like Salamander, Kaiser Saucy, and Mr. Blood are starting rallies. The two rallies are against Chuck. If it is against Chuck, I assume it was probably around here. But it seems like they already taken that back, and it was a little bit before. So Chuck right now is starting a rally on Kaiser Saucy, so it seems like SJO is not going to leave them behind in terms of the power station. And the reason that they are doing that, for those that don't know, is that power station is one of the most important buildings due to have control time to make buildings. When you have full control of solar power station, any building that you fight for is 1 minute and 30 seconds. Why this is important? Because this forces the enemy team to do a 1 minute rally every single time to try to fight back for full control. And even if they do that, they only have a 30-second window from the second that they lose that to actually make it. And considering that there is walk time out of the building and in the building, that window actually is reduced to roughly 10 seconds. So you have roughly 10 seconds to do everything correctly as a rally lead, and that puts a lot of pressure in the team that does not have the solar power station. So solar power station is a building that's going to put immense pressure in people in trying to be fighting for buildings. So again, we are seeing a lot of the points still being accumulated in the border in the outside area. Buongiorno, buongiorno, Pepe. And it seems like they reset in the last second the control of solar power station, and solar right now is being under control for Cardini. Cardine comes with the speed in and basically get all the everyone out. Kaiser Saucy, however, does another march. Cardine speeds up back out. And right now it's when the match starts to actually divert from only the rally leads to also the joiners. The reason for that is because right now we are going to have 12 water tanks in the map in each region, and those water tanks are going to give a good amount of points because it means 6 times 240. So that is around 1,440 points per minute, which is equivalent to one of the big buildings. Every 10 minutes, you're going to get one of those. We are going to see how both teams are going to do this fight. Seems like the scaling of power from the top 3 players, Cardine, Sus, and Chuck, are actually putting enough pressure into 342. I do expect 342 to, in the end of the match, reduce this amount of points decently. But I think that at this point, unless they scale and do something in the next 10 minutes or so, this match score is probably already settled. Um, I wouldn't say so if the powers of them were a little bit closer, but it seems like they have to double rally every single building that they have to be out. So they would have to be hyper effective to be in everything like that. And it seems like they are going to be using some of the waves, or they have been using the waves, and some people are actually fighting for and reinforcing munitions factory. Right now, it seems that Baco is sending a march there. I don't know if it's exactly a march or I know it's a scout at the moment to see which players are in there. But most of the fights are being done in the three most important builds in terms of points and in solar, due to the fact that, as I mentioned, solar is the most important build in terms of utility. So right now, this means that this match is going to be keeping moving in the direction of SJL, the way that things are, especially due to the fact that even though that the blue team, which is 338, is controlling a lot of the water tanks, it seems like sorry, blue team is 342. It seems like the red team, which is 338, is actually pushing back in a lot of the buildings, as you can see. So we have Brian here fighting back. We have SpongeBob. Is everyone ready? Fighting for this, and then it seems like in this quadrant we do have Tiny Mouse, but in the majority of this there is more control of 342, especially due to the fact that they have more players committed to it. 342 have three, while SJL have two. So this plays a part, and it also means that they are committing as they are committing less players in there, they can put more pressure in other places. In SJL is also, it seems, in this quadrant committing to less players as well. That being said, it seems like the center here, there was a flip from 342, and they are getting a lot of the water that is around it, reducing a little bit the scores of the points that they are getting. And as they have full control of solar right now, this means that it's only going to take them 1 minute and 30 seconds. Hello, Ryder Shelby. How you doing? And as you could see, Sus already started a rally and started a rally at a 27.39 minute mark. So we should see Sus walking in around 30 seconds, actually 25 seconds. And I wonder if it's going to be enough, because it's 25 plus the walking time. Probably it is. If Sus can kick out Mr. Blood with a single rally out, it's gonna avoid giving a full control to 342. But the thing with that is that Sus is a little bit behind in terms of positioning. So there is space here. There are two spaces here, which would mean a little bit more people walking, not only to Sus, but from Sus to the center. So it seems like that Mr. Blood is gonna get a full control and score some points for 342. And there you go. Seems like 342 snatched a few points that actually is going to be helping them close the gap, even if a little bit. And why they have full control right now here in that middle building, they are also being able to control most of the water tanks at the moment, even though the red team is fighting back for them. So this match, even though there is a decent chunk of points coming for the red team right now, keep in mind, as I mentioned before, that there is a lot of points in the board to be flipped around. So we have 8,000 points here, which means 32,000 points in total, which means 60,000 points of this 100 points are still in game. As soon as these buildings are flipped, these points are still in game. So the difference is, again, roughly, instead of 100,000 points, I'd say 60,000 points, considering that it's even for both sides in terms of how much they can get. And 60,000 points is doable for you to actually flip over. So this game is not over yet. We have a lot of cats in SJL. We have Simba with the lion picture. We have Kitty. Like, it seems like SJL are a bunch of cat people. Chuck is still putting a lot of pressure in here, and it seems like Kaiser Saucy and other free for two players are burning some of the joiners that are around here, which will put more pressure in those players. And the fact that they relocated means that all the marchers came back, and as the marchers came back, they are not in any buildings that they were before. So if Linates was assigned to, let's say, Power Station or any gathering spots or anything like that, that would mean that they are actually able to not able to compete for those buildings anymore. Chuck now has full control. Seems like they are sending a bunch of singles to Chuck. I don't know if that's going to be enough. It seems that the rally that came with the singles was enough, so it seems like they are kicking out Chuck in here, and they are going to be fighting for full control of Solar again. As you can see, most of the fights is not being focused in a bunch of these buildings. So the strategy that likely free 8 is probably gonna have to face at the end of the match by 342 is the following. They have roughly 5 buildings with around 8,000 plus 9,000. So they have 9,036 plus the 8,000 that is here. So we have 44,000 points, which means that almost 100,000 points can be snatched from the beginning. So if 338 can't hold these 3 buildings and they can keep capitalizing and fighting for these buildings, plus a lot of the actual water tanks that are being fought for here, especially with the pressure that they are putting in the joiners and in some of the buildings that they are in, this is not looking that bad for 342. 342 might have a chance to pull it off, and even if they don't, this match is not gonna be 100,000 points by the time that it ends. Unless something goes wrong in their execution in this last phase, this is looking decent. This is looking decent for 342 right now. It seems like SpongeBob is giving a lot of help here to Chuck with some singles as well. All right, and we have a lot of people reinforcing, including speeding out from Solar again to try to hold those buildings, and they are holding treatment and they are holding power station for a good chunk, while Sus is still fighting back for the center. The problem with fighting back from the center while you don't hold power station means that what will happen most likely in here is that Salamander is probably going to kick Sus again, even with a double rally. And by the time that Salamander comes back, sorry, by the time that Sus come back to kick Salamander, what will end up happening is that Salamander will have full control, which will give them a bunch of more points. One thing that people do not know is that the score that you get for full control keeps happening, and you keep getting chunk of points every time that you have full control. So if you can hold Solar and keep snatching, especially from the center, a bunch of points, are able to capitalize in a lot of these small amount of points in that second. Seems like we have a lot of players that are actually trying to fight for the center here with Sus. There's a huge amount of players from the red team that are capitalizing and committing to the points here. This means that they're not committing to some of the water tanks outside, which gives the blue team a good advantage in the water tanks right now. As you can see, 1 minute and 15 seconds. And there's still no rally that was started. So this will mean that they are going to be able to snatch a bunch of more points again for 342 here with the full control. So even though this is actually a very interesting match for the following reason. Even though that 343 is ahead in terms of points, the team that is setting the pace of the match at this moment right now, as the one that is setting the rhythm and how things are being played, is 342. And this again shows how skilled they are being in terms of the match, because SJL has a huge advantage in power from what I've checked so far, and that advantage is being reflected on the score. But they are feeling the pressure of having to fight in those specific buildings that they are ahead, and that pressure will reflect also in the buildings that they are fighting for in the end. So for someone that actually don't know a lot about the game, they will be looking at this score and they will think that the advantage is huge and there is no chance for them to come back. But if you look at the data and how the matches and things go through, you will probably see that this match is a lot closer than you may think. They are still keeping the advantage of 100,000 points. And even though they're 100,000 points for the other team, and the interesting thing about that advantage is that whenever that advantage is going through, the score of the buildings that have the water on top keep going up. So right now we do have 5 buildings with 10,000 points, which is exactly 100,000 points that can be turned over. So at this point, considering all the buildings that can be reset, this is a very close game at this moment. Let's see if Cardine is going to be able to hold water treatment one, and if Sus is going to be able to hold for 3 minutes at Central Reservoir. Salamander already started a rally with Mr. Blood, so they are double rallying with 1 second difference since they are both very close to each other. And Salamander is a little bit behind compared to Mr. Blood here. I think Salamander is 1 tile behind. I have to check. No, they are both at the same time. So this is a double rally with 1 second of difference, which is a well executed double rally. There are better double rallies with a 0 second, but unless you were able to time the milliseconds and consider lag input, 1 second is the best that you can hope for. So kudos for the 342 for the execution of that double rally. Very well done, as both of them are within the reach of the tile. And God, this skin throws me off, and how and where actually the settlement is. I can see why people like it, but it's definitely not very useful to cast. One thing that I wish I could see in the spectator mode is what troops are inside of each building. But I assume that if they did that, that would actually be exploited by people watching the match and telling others without being able to scout to do that. So let's be realistic and assume that that's not going to be a good idea to be done either way. So Salamander is still putting pressure in here, and there was a rally started by Sus. Sus this time relocated from the position that I told here before for the reasons that I said before, because as you remember the last time that Sus started walking to do the rally and everything else, Sus was too far away, so they were able to hold the building. They were able to hold the building before actually Sus rally hit, and they were able to capitalize on the points that were in. It seems like now that Cardane is actually starting to burn some players from 342. As I've mentioned before, all 3 players from SGL tend to have a very aggressive playstyle. Sus, Cardini, and Simba. And it seems like they relocated some other players to try to fight for this solar power station, at least only to flip it. And while they are doing that, they were able to burn some of the players that are from 342. And Sus was able to avoid them to actually fight back and hold 1 more point here. So this is a good response from SJL. Seems like SJL right now is being able to take back the pacing that the match was before. Because as I mentioned, even though they were ahead, the ones that were setting the pacing and how it was played before was 342. But this is a moment where they actually adapted and relocated and adjusted some of their members in here, especially in the buildings, to be able to push back. And as you can see, even though the blue team still have more water tanks, it seems that the red team started to respond with water tanks as well. Especially in this quadrant, even though that they have more players from the blue team, it seems the red team is doing an excellent job of actually being able to contest for those water tanks. So I'd say that right now things are getting looking good for SJL. They were not looking good a few minutes ago due to the fact of them actually being able to be in their back foot in terms of how they were playing, but seems like they adjusted and now they're not only ahead in score, but they're also setting the pace again. And let's see how Free for Two is going to respond to that, especially due to the fact that a lot of their players are being burned right now by Cardin. Keep in mind, as I mentioned, that there's a lot of points still on board with every single building that is in here. So if we try to score in here, we have far buildings with 1250, 1200 and 12,500. So that would make around 50,000 points. Plus here 64. So this would make it 70,000, 75,000. So we do have 75,000 on board, which means that that is actually 150,000 points for grabs. So there is a chance, due to how the match is going, that assuming that the red team is not actually being able to capture any water puddles, that they are going to lose this match. I don't think that's going to be the case. It's very unlikely that they can be that sloppy in terms of how water puddles are going to go. That being said, it's not mathematically done yet, so it's not over yet for Free for Two. They are fighting valiantly and they are putting pressure even up to the 18-minute mark for SJL. Seems like Free for Two fought for the building again and a hold solar power station. It seemed like the red team moved out of solar power station. They're starting to scout to see how many troops are in each of the buildings, because around the 15 to 10 minute mark, it's when it starts to be worth to actually start resetting the buildings. So we are going to be seeing a wave of water tanks, the last wave of water tanks at the 16-minute mark, which is going to give more points in the field for that. And then roughly around 2 to 3 minutes, we should start to see a lot of the matches that a lot of the flipping from the buildings to get the water in all the buildings that are in here. As I mentioned, right now we must have 80,000, close to 80,000 points in the field in all those buildings. And if those buildings are all flipped and the flipping that is done in that is done effectively by 342, 342 might have a chance of winning this. I personally don't expect it, not because I don't believe in the competence of 342, but I do think it would be too sloppy from 338 due to how they have been played so far to do that. Even though that in some cases 338 have been a little bit slow to adapt, they have been dominating in every single place that they have put their efforts in. So it's more like they are a giant team rolling everywhere that they go, but due to the fact that they're being so big and so strong, they tend to be a little bit slow to adapt. Even though that is the case, I don't think that they are going to be slow enough to not be able to gather those points, because as I mentioned, they have been responding everywhere they have gone, and that 342 have attacked so far. So as soon as they see, even that may happen in one or maybe two buildings in how they are going to be able to flip in those cases, but I don't expect that to happen in every single building, which is what actually 342 needs right now. Seems like Cardin is actually going to the center as well, and we have the final wave of water tanks. And it seems like the blue team is taking control of most of the water tanks right now, including the water tanks that are in here. They are pushing very close in terms of how much points they are getting per minute. This is getting interesting for the last 15 minutes of the match. Are we gonna see any flipping any soon? Seems like they keep scouting to see how many players are in there. Simon, that would be the case if it was during the old matches. If it was during the old system with no water puddles, you would be 100% right. But do you see there's a score in here in the top, which means 14,000 points? That score, whenever this building is flipped, it is taken from the red team score. Right now, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 of these buildings. So this means roughly 60,000 points that is taken from the score if these buildings is flipped. So from these buildings alone, they would be taken out just by resetting that to 190,000. Then those 60,000 can be picked up by the blue team. But there is also this 16,000, this 4,000, this 4,000, this 6,000, and this 5,000. So if you combine all those efforts of the water on top by removing it, even though that the red team is ahead, there is still a chance for the blue team to be taken on. So I'm sorry, but you can't see the forest for the trees. You may see the numbers in the screen, but you're not seeing exactly what is happening in the match. Because if you watched how the free for two played so far, they purposely never touched any of these buildings. All right, so as I mentioned, we should start to see the flipping of the buildings roughly around the next minute or so. Here we go. As I mentioned, here goes Salamander. It seems like I was lucky enough to get exactly the same building that we're in. Seems like great minds think alike. I have no internal info on how things are gonna play through. I just click on where I would do things. It seems like Salamander thinks the same way. And it seems like they are going to be pushing in every single building right now. They already did one of them with Ingus, and it seems like a lot of people are relocating, and a lot of the blue team are relocating. And not everyone from the red team is pulling through. So this first number of points are going to go mostly in this one for the blue team, although the red team got some water from the other side. All right. So this reduces the scores a little bit more. Now we're going to be seeing. Let me see if there are any other buildings that are fighting for at the moment. Seems like not. They are leaving, started to leave right now. They just blew up with Salamander, the other one. It seems like they positioned very well in here. Seems like red team is responding a little bit better for this one. Red team got a little more water for this side. But it reduced from 120,000 points to 100,000 points right now in the 11-minute mark. Seems like they are going to try to reset. Salamander is going to try to reset this water treatment center too. And they did reset. They're going to try to gather the water right now. A lot of people are teleporting in to try to get some of the water. SpongeBob was ready to try to teleport in, but was not good enough. Score was reduced a little bit more. The difference is now 75,000. There are more buildings to be flipped. And this is gonna be an exciting end of the match, everyone. Is it gonna be enough? Is resetting every single building gonna be enough? We'll see. There is more than 80,000 points to be fought for in here. So it is possible to actually do that. I am excited to actually wait for Salamander to walk and to see if they are going to be able to bounce Cardine at the moment. 9 minutes to go, 80,000 points to fight for. There's 15,000 here, 16,000 here. That makes 30,000 to fight for. Plus 15,000 here, 45. This means more 5,000. So 50, 55, 60. So I still have 60,000 points in the match. At this point, I think it's very likely that SJL is going to win, but it's going to be for a much closer score than people actually think it will. Are they gonna? They just bounced 338. Things like X is gonna be able to score here. Panch was able to get some points in there. Denise was able to score those points for the red team. This reduced the difference to 60,000 points. And you have to keep in mind that while everything in here is being cleared and hit, as we mentioned, the score on the other platforms is still going for the water tanks. And in water tanks, the blue team is dominating at the moment. So this is actually a very interesting push that they are doing. So now it's 50,000 points of difference. And blue team is fighting for every single water puddle that they can find. And every time that they do a water puddle somewhere, it seems like they are relocating and fighting for somewhere else. So, and again, this is the same thing as I said before. Even though the SJL is the one that is ahead, again, in the end of the match, the ones that are setting the pace of the match, so the ones that, in my opinion, are playing more strategically, as I mentioned that it was going to go in the beginning of the match, is 342. We still have 21,000 points here to be fought for. 5,000 in here. Again, I don't think that's going to be quite enough, but it's going to be very close. Red Center still have 6,000 points as well here. There's still 30,000 points here on board. So yeah, there actually may be a chance for them to flip. So if they flip this and flip center, this is going to be a very close score. Mr. Sonic, this is a plan that they were doing because they are weaker in terms of stats. They are much weaker, and they had to double rally almost every single one of the rally leads from 338. And they were able to fight specifically for where they had more and concentrated efforts, like a thin razor, were able to push back and the teams and the things that we're doing. Honestly, very good planning from their part. Seems like they pushed back and reset the center. Probably they went for the center first because the center has more points. So they are not going to be able to get those points while they're doing that. They were not able to gather every single point in there, but they are going to capitalize in the points due to the fact it seems like the red team right now is starting to go for the water tanks as well. Even though the water tanks was mostly being dominated by the, and still is a little bit, by the blue team before. And it seems like this is gonna be where the fight is gonna be mostly decided, because it's 29,000 points and this is 17,000 points. So 17 is going to be removed from one team, and then everyone is going to be able to get their points somewhere else. There are some small amount of points that can be gathered and can be gained from the other teams in here, but in majority of the cases, this is mostly solved. There's still 1,000 points in here, 1,000 points in here, but in general, most of the points that are being fought right now are going to be fought tooth and nail for this building here. And it seems like people are starting to walk towards us. Salamander reset it. The position in here is good for. It's good for the for more. It's better for the red team, at least in the bottom side in here, than it is for the blue team. Red team is scoring more points than the blue team with the water puddles in here. And it seems like the blue team was not able to capture all the points in the beginning, but it's still going to be a close match in terms of 20,000 points. For a score of 120,000 points, this was a very good recovery from their part. Now the difference is roughly only 13,000 points, and there's still being some blowing up being done by 342 to try to get the score a little bit lower. They can still probably reset a few of these buildings, but not many at the moment. So there are still 3,000 points that they can remove from here. 1,000 points that they can remove from here. 1,000 points that can remove from here. So they are going to fight tooth and nail for every single point of advantage that they can get in the moment. So it is going to be right now 21,000 points of difference. And with a lot of the buildings in here that are a lot of water tanks in here that are going to be in there. All right. 1 minute and 50 seconds. Seems like the match is mostly solved. Seems like they were very close, but not quite good enough for actually be able to push back. These full controls are not gonna happen before the end of the match, so they're basically just resets to try to push back. Seems like it's 1 more minute and the match is gonna be sorted out. There are some more points in the feud to be fought for, but most of the points that are in the feud are not gonna be enough for it to be pushed back. All right, from an advantage that was this high to be able to push back this much, congratulations for 342. It was a good fight, and congratulations for SGL. As I mentioned, SGL is very good to adapt under pressure because every time that they were ahead, 342 was able to put them in the back foot. But even though they were playing the back foot, they were able to turn back and to take back the pacing of the match as well. So this was a good back and forth in terms of control of the match. That was very interesting, and even though the score didn't show that, it was very clear by the gameplay that both teams were playing strategically in different ways. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy the match. I enjoyed streaming to you, and I'll see